Chapter 1 Poimandres, the Shepherd of Men. This is the most famous of the Hermetic documents, a revelation account describing a vision of the creation of the universe and the nature and fate of humanity. Authors from the Renaissance onward have been struck by the way in which its creation myth seems partly inspired by Genesis, partly reacting against it. The fall has here become the descent of the primal man through the spheres of the planets to the world of nature, a descent caused not by disobedience but by love, and done with the blessing of God. The 7 rulers of fate discussed in sections 9, 14, and 25 are the archons of the 7 planets, which also appear in Plato's Timaeus, and in a number of ancient writings usually lumped together as Gnostic. Their role here is an oddly ambivalent one. Powers of harmony who are nonetheless the sources of humanity's tendencies to evil. Thank you for being here. We shall begin. It chanced once on a time my mind was meditating on the things that are. My thought was raised to a great height, the senses of my body being held back, just as men who are weighed down with sleep after a fill of food, or from fatigue of body. Methought a being more than vast, in size beyond all bounds, called out my name and said, "Would you hear and see? And what hast thou in mind to learn and to know?" And I said, "Who art thou?" He said, "I am man's shepherd, Poimandres, mind of all masterhead. I know what thou desirest, and I am with thee everywhere." And I replied, "I long to learn the things that are and comprehend their nature and know God. This is," I said, "what I desire to hear." And he answered back to me, "Hold in thy mind all thou wouldst know, and I will teach thee." Even with these words his aspect changed, and straightway in the twinkling of an eye all things were opened to me, and I saw a vision limitless. All things turned into light, sweet, joyous light, and I became transported as I gazed. But in a little while darkness came settling down on part of, awesome and gloomy, coiling in sinuous folds, so that methought it like unto a snake. And then the darkness changed into some sort of a moist nature, tossed about beyond all power of words, belching out smoke as from a fire, and groaning forth a wailing sound that beggars all description. And after that an outcry inarticulate came forth from it, as though it were a voice of fire. There, out of sight, a holy word descended on that nature, and upwards to the height from the moist nature leaped forth pure fire. Light was it, swift and active too. The air, too, being light, followed after the fire, from out of the earth, and water rising up to fire, so that it seemed to hang therefrom. But earth and water stayed so mingled with each other that earth from water no one could discern. Yet were they moved to hear by reason of the Spirit word pervading them. Then said to me, man shepherd, didst understand this vision, what it means? Nay, that shall I know, said I. That light, he said. Am I thy God, mind prior to moist nature which appeared from darkness? The light word that appeared from mind is Son of God. What then, said I. Know that what sees in thee and hears is the Lord's word, but mind is Father God. Not separate are they from one another, just in their union, rather is it life consists. Thanks be to thee, I said. So understand the light, he answered, and make friends with it. And speaking thus, he gazed for long into my eyes, so that I trembled to look at him. But when he raised his head, I see in mind the light. But now in powers no man could number, and cosmos grown beyond all bounds, and that the fire was compassed round about by a most mighty power, and now subdued had come unto a stand. And when I saw these things, I understood by reason of man's shepherd word. But as I was in great astonishment, he said to me again, Thou didst behold in mind the archetypal form whose being is before beginning and without end. Thus spake to me man-shepherd. And I say, Whence then have nature's elements their being? To this answer he gives, From will of God. Nature received the word, and gazing upon the cosmos, beautiful did it copy it, making herself into a sort of cosmos by means of her own elements and by the births of souls. And the God mind, being male and female both, as light and life subsisting, brought forth another mind to give things form, who, God, as he was of fire and spirit, formed 7 rulers who enclosed the cosmos that the sense perceives. Men call their ruling fate. Straightway from out the downward elements, God's reason leaped up to nature's pure formation and was at one with the formative mind, for it was coessential with it, and nature's downward elements were thus left reasonless, so as to be pure matter. Then the formative mind, at one with reason, he surrounds the spheres and spins them with his whorl, set churning his formations, and let them churn from a beginning boundless unto an endless end, for that the circulation of these spheres begins where it doth end, as mind doth will. And from the downward elements nature brought forth live reasonless, for he did not extend the reason to them. The air brought forth things winged, the water things that swim in the earth, and watcher one from another parted as mind willed, and from her bosom earth produced what lives she had, 4-footed things and reptiles, beasts wild and tame. But all-Father Mind, being life and light, did bring forth man co-equal to himself, with whom he fell in love, as being his own child. For he was beautiful beyond compare, the image of his sire. In very truth, God fell in love with his own form, and on him did bestow all of his own formations. And when he gazed upon what the informer had created in the Father, man too wished to inform, and so assent was given him by the Father, changing his state to the formative sphere, and that he was to have his whole authority, he gazed upon his brother's creatures. They fell in love with him, and gave him each a share of his own ordering. And after that he had well learned their essence, and had become a sharer in their nature, he had a mind to break right through the boundary of their spheres, and to subdue the might of that which pressed upon the fire. So, he who hath the whole authority over all the mortals in the cosmos, and over its lives irrational, bent his face downwards through the harmony, breaking right through its strength, and showed to downward nature God's fair form. And when she saw the form of beauty which can never satiate, and him who now possessed within himself each single energy of all 7 rulers, as well as God's own form, she smiled with love. For 'twas as though she'd seen the image of man's fairest form upon her water, his shadow on her earth. He churned, beholding the form like to himself, existing in her and her water, loved it and willed to live in it, and with the will came act. And so he vivified the form devoid of reason, And nature took the object of her love and wound herself completely around him, and they were intermingled, for they were lovers. And this is why beyond all creatures on the earth man is twofold, mortal because of body, but because of the essential man immortal. Though deathless and possessed of sway over all, yet doth he suffer as a mortal does, subject to fate. Thus, though above the harmony, within the harmony he hath become a slave, though male-female, as from a father male-female, and though he's sleepless from a sleepless sire, yet is he overcome by sleep. Teach on, O mind of me, for I myself as well am a Morris of the word. The shepherd said, This is the mystery kept hid until this day. Nature embraced by man brought forth a wonder, oh so wonderful. For as he had the nature of the concord of the seven, who, as I said to thee, were made of fire and spirit, nature delayed not, but immediately brought forth 7 men in correspondence with the natures of the 7 male-female, and moving in the air. I said, Shepherd, for now I'm filled with great desire and long to hear. Do not run off. And the shepherd replied, Keep silence, for not as yet have I unrolled for thee the first discourse. Lo, I am still, I said. In such a wise, then, as I have said, the generation of these 7 came to pass. Earth was as woman, her water filled with longing. Ripeness she took from fire, spirit from ether. Nature thus brought forth frames to suit the form of man. And man from light and life changed into soul and mind, from life to soul, from life to mind. And thus continued all the sense world's parts until the period of their end and new beginnings. Now listen to the rest of the discourse, which thou dost long to hear. The period being ended, the bond that bound them all was loosened by God's will. For all the animals being male and female, at the same time with man were loosed apart. Some became partly male, some in like fashion partly female, and straightway God spake his holy word. Increase ye in increasing, and multiply in multitude, ye creatures and creations of all. And man that hath mind in him, let him learn to know that he himself is deathless, and that the cause of death is love, though love is all. When he said this, his forethought did by means of fate and harmony affect their couplings and their generations founded, and so all things were multiplied according to their kind. And he who has learned to know himself hath reached that good which doth transcend abundance. But he who through a love that leads astray expends his love upon his body, he stays in darkness wandering and suffering through his senses things of death. What is so great the fault, I said, that the ignorant commit, that they should be deprived of deathlessness? Thou seemst, he said, not to have given heed to what I said, or to what you heard. Did I not bid thee to think? Yes, I do. Yes, I do think, and I remember, and therefore I give you thanks. If thou didst think, he said, tell me, why do they merit death who are in death? It is because the gloomy darkness is the root and base of the material frame. From it came the moist nature. From this the body and the sense world was composed, and from this body death doth the water drain. Right was thy thought, but how doth he who knows himself go unto him, as God's word hath declared? And I reply, The Father of the universals consists of light and life. From him man was born. Thou sayest well, speaking. Light and life is Father God, and from him man was born. If then thou learnest that thou art thyself of life and light, and that thou happenest to be out of them, thou shalt return again to life. Thus did man shepherd speak. But tell me further, mind of me, I cried. How shall I come to life again? For God does say, the man who has mind in him, let him learn to know that he himself is deathless. Have not all men mind? Thou sayest well, O thou thus speaking. I, mind myself, am present with holy and good men. I, mind myself, am present with holy men and good, the pure and merciful men who live piously. To such my presence doth become an aid, and straightway they gain gnosis of all things, and win the Father's love by their pure lives, and give him thanks, invoking on him blessings and chanting hymns, intent on him with ardent love. And ere they give up the body unto its proper death, they churn them with disgust from its sensations, from knowledge of what things they operate. Nay, it is I, the mind, that will not let the operations which befall the body work to their natural end. For being doorkeeper, I'll close up all the entrances, and cut the mental actions off which base and evil energies induce. But to the mindless ones, the wicked and depraved, the envious and covetous, and those who murder, do, and love in piety, I am far off, yielding my place to the avenging demon, who, sharpening the fire, tormenteth him and addeth fire to fire upon him, and rusheth upon through his senses, thus rendering him readier for transgression of the law, so that he meets with greater torment. Nor does he ever cease to have desire for appetites inordinate, insatiately striving in the dark. Well, thou taught me all as I desired, O mind. And now, pray, tell me further of the nature of the way above, as now it is for me. And to this the shepherd said, when the material body is to be dissolved, first thou surrenderest the body by itself unto the work of change, and thus the form thou hast doth vanish, and thou surrenderest thy way of life, void of its energy, unto the demon. The body's senses next pass into their sources, becoming separate and resurrect as energies, and passion and desire withdraw unto that nature which is void of reason. And thus it is that man doth speed his way thereafter upwards through the harmony. To the first zone he gives the energy of growth and waning. Unto the second zone, device of evils, now de-energized. Unto the third, the guile of the desires, de-energized. Unto the fourth, his domineering arrogance, also degenerized. Unto the fifth, unholy daring and rashness of audacity, de-energized. Unto the sixth, striving for wealth by evil means, deprived of its aggrandizement. And to the seventh zone, ensnaring falsehood, also de-energized. And then, with all the energizings of the harmony script from him, clothed in his proper power, he cometh to that nature which belongs unto the eighth, and there with those that are hymneth to the Father. They who are welcome his coming there with joy, and he, made like to them that sojourn there, doth further hear the powers who are above the nature that belongs unto the eighth, singing their songs of praise to God in language of their own. And then they in a band go to the Father home. Of their own selves they make surrender of themselves to powers, and thus become powers they are in God. This the good end for those who have gained gnosis, to be made one with God. Why shouldst thou then delay? Must it not be, since thou hast all received, that thou shouldst to the worthy point the way, in order that through thee the race of mortal kind may be thy God be saved? Thus when he'd said, man shepherd mingled with powers. But I, with thanks and blessings unto the Father of the universal powers, was freed, full of the power he had poured into me, and full of what he taught me of the nature of the all and of the loftiest vision. And I began to preach unto men the beauty of devotion and gnosis. O ye people, earth-born folk, ye who have given yourselves to drunkenness and sleep and ignorance of God, be sober now. Cease from your surfeit. Cease to be glamored by irrational sleep. And when they heard, they came with one accord, whereon I say, ye earth-born folk, why have ye given yourselves up to death, while yet ye have the power of sharing deathlessness? Repent, O ye who walk with air arm in arm, and make of ignorance the share of your board. Get ye out from the light of darkness, and take your part in deathlessness. Forsake destruction. And some of them, with jest upon their lips, departed from me, abandoning themselves unto the way of death. Others entreated to be taught, casting themselves before my feet. But I made them arise, and I became a leader of the race towards home, teaching the words, how and in what way they shall be saved. I sowed in them the words of wisdom, of deathless water were they given to drink. And when even was come and all sun's beams began to set, I bade them all give thanks to God. And when they had brought to an end the giving of their thanks, and when they brought their giving of thanks to an end, each man returned to his own resting place. But I recorded in my heart man's shepherd's benefaction, and with my every hope fulfilled more rejoiced. For body's sleep became the soul's awakening, and closing of the eyes, true vision pregnant with good my silence, and the utterance of my word begetting of good things. And this befell me from my mind, that is man's shepherd, word of all masterhood, by whom being God inspired, I came unto the plain of truth. Wherefore with all my soul and strength thanksgiving give I unto Father God. Holy art thou, O God, the universal's Father. Holy art thou, O God, whose will perfects itself by means of its own powers. Holy art thou, O God, who willeth to be known and art known by thine own. Holy art thou, who didst by word make to consist the things that are. Holy art thou, of whom all nature had been made an image, whose form nature had never made, more powerful than all powerful, transcending all preeminence. Holy art thou, thou better than all praise. Accept my reason's offerings pure from soul and heart, for I, stretched up to thee, O thou unutterable, unspeakable, whose names not but the silence can express, give ear to me who pray that I may never of gnosis fail, gnosis which is our common being's nature. And fill me with thy power and with this grace of thine, that I may give the light to those in ignorance of the race, my brethren and thy sons. For this, 'cause I believe and bear witness, I go to life and light. Blessed art thou, O Father, thy man would wholly be as thou art holy, even as thou gave him thy full authority to be. Chapter 2. To Asclepius. This dialogue sets forth the difference between the physical and metaphysical worlds and the context of Greek natural philosophy. Some of the language is fairly technical. The errant spheres of section 6 and 7 are the celestial spheres carrying the planets, while the inerrant sphere is that of the fixed stars. It's useful to keep in mind also that air and spirit are interchangeable concepts in Greek thought, and that the concept of good has a range of implications which don't come across in the English word. One is that the good of any being in Greek thought was also that being's necessary goal. The criticism of childlessness in section 17 should probably be read as a response to the Christian ideal of celibacy, which horrified many people in the ancient world. Hermes. All that is moved, Asclepius. Is it not moved in something and by something? Asclepius. Well, assuredly. And must not that in which it's moved be greater than the moved? Yeah, it must. Mover, again, has greater power than moved? It has, of course. The nature, furthermore, of that in which it's moved must be quite other from the nature of the moved. Yes, it must completely. Is not, again, this cosmos vast? So vast that than it there exists nobody greater. Well, it must completely, yes. Is not, again, Asclepius, this cosmos crammed with multitudes of other mighty frames, nay, rather all the other bodies that there are? Yes, of course it is. And yet the cosmos is a body. Yes, it is a body. And one that's moved? Yes, assuredly. Of what size, then, must be the space in which it's moved, and of what kind must be the nature of that space? Must it not be far vaster than the cosmos, in order that it may be able to find room for its continued course, so that the moved may not be cramped for what of room and lose its motion? Well, yes, something, thrice greatest one. It needs must be immensely vast. And of what nature? Must it not be, Asclepius, of just the contrary, and is not contrary to body, well, bodiless? Yes, of course, agreed. Space, then, is bodiless. But bodiless must either be some godlike thing or God himself, and by some godlike thing I mean no more the generable, that which is generated, but the ingenerable. If then space be some godlike thing, it is substantial. But if 'tis God himself, it transcends substance. But it is to be thought of otherwise than God, and in this way. God is first thinkable for us, not for himself. For that the thing that's thought doth fall beneath the thinker's sense. God, then, cannot be thinkable unto himself, in that he is thought of by himself, as being nothing else but what he thinks. But he is something else for us, and so he is thought of by us. If space is therefore to be thought, it should not then be thought as God, but space. If God is also to be thought, he should not be conceived as space, but as energy that can contain all space. Further, all that is moved not in the moved, but in the stable, and that which moves another is of course stationary, for 'tis impossible that it should move with it. Well, how is it then, that things down here, thrice greatest one, are moved with those that are already moved. For thou hast said the errant spheres were moved by the inerrant one. This is not, O Asclepius, a moving with, but one against. They are not moved with one another, but one against the other. It is the contrariety which turneth the resistance of their motion into rest, for that resistance is the rest of motion. Hence, too, the errant spheres, being moved contrarily to the inerrant one, are moved by one another by mutual contrariety, and also by the spatial one through contrariety itself. And this can otherwise not be. The bears up there, which neither set nor rise, thinkest thou that they rest or move? Well, they move, thrice greatest one. And what their motion, my Asclepius? Motion that churns forever, but around the same. But revolution, motion around the same, is fixed by rest. For round the same doth stop beyond the same them being stopped. If it be steadied in round same, the contrary stands firm, being rendered ever stable by its contrariety. Of this I'll give thee here on earth an instance, which the eye can see. Regard the animals down here. A man, for instance, swimming. The water moves, yet the resistance of his hands and feet give him stability, so that he is not borne along with it, nor sunk thereby. Well, thou hast, thrice greatest, added a most clear instance. All motion, then, is caused in station and by station. The motion, therefore, of the cosmos and of every other hylix will not be caused by things exterior to cosmos, but by things interior to the exterior, such things as soul, or spirit, or some such other thing incorporeal. 'Tis not the body that doth move the living thing in it, nay, not even the whole body of the universe, a lesser body, even though there be no life in it. But what meanest thou by this, thrice greatest one? Is it not bodies, then, that move the stock and stone and all the other things inanimate? By no means, Asclepius. The something in the body, that which moves the thing inanimate, this surely is not a body, for it moves the two of them, both body of the lifter and the lifted, so that a thing that's lifeless will not move a lifeless thing. That which doth move another thing is animate, in that it is the mover. Thou seest, then, how heavy laden is the soul, for it alone doth lift two bodies. That things, moreover, moved are moved in something as well as moved by something is clear. Yes, O thrice greatest one. Things moved must needs be moved in something void. Thou sayest well, O my Asclepius, for naught of things that are is void. Alone the is not is void and stranger to substance. For that which is subsistent can never change to void. Well, are there then, O thrice greatest one, no such things as an empty cask, for instance, or an empty jar, a cup and vat, other things like unto them? Alack, Asclepius, for are thy wandering from the truth. Thinkest thou that things most full and most replete are void? How meanest thou? What do you mean, thrice greatest one? What do you mean, thrice greatest one? Is not air body? Yes, of course it is. And body, body not consist from blending of the four elements? Full then of air are all thou callest void, and if of air, then of the four. Further of this the converse follows, that all thou callest full are void of air, for that they have their space filled out with other bodies, and therefore are not able to receive the air therein. These then which thou dost say are void, they should be hollow named, not void. For they not only are, but they are full of air and spirit. Thy argument, O thrice greatest one, is not to be gainsaid. Air is a body. Further, it is body which doth pervade all things, and so pervading them, you must be right. What are we then? To that space in which the all moves, the bodiless, Asclepius. Well then, what is bodiless? 'Tis mind and reason, whole out of whole, all self-embracing, free from all body, from all error free, unsensible to body and untouchable, self-stayed in self, containing all, preserving those that are, whose rays, to use a likeness, are good, truth, light beyond lights, the archetype of soul. Well, what then is God? Not any of these is he, for he it is that causeth them to be, both all and each and everything of all that are. Nay, not any of these is he, for he it is that causeth them to be, both all and each and everything of all that are. Nor hath he left a thing beside that is not, but they are all from things that are, and not from things. For that the things that are not have naturally no power of being anything, but naturally have the power of the inability to be. And conversely, the things that are have not the nature of some time not being. What do you say ever then? What do you think God is? God, therefore, is not mind, but cause that the mind is. God is not spirit, but cause that spirit is. God is not light, but cause that light is. Hence one should honor God with these two names, the good and the Father, names which pertain to him alone and to no one else. For no one of the other so-called gods, no one of men or daimones, can be in any measure good, but God alone, and he is good alone and nothing else. The rest of things are separable all from the good's nature, for all the rest are soul and body, which have no place that can contain the good. For that as mighty is the greatness of the good as is the rising, for that as many mighty is the greatness of the good as is the being of all things that are, both bodies and things bodiless, things sensible and intelligible. Call thou not, therefore, aught else good, for thou wouldst impious be, nor anything at any time call God but good alone, for so thou wouldst again be impious. Though then the good is spoken of by all, it is not understood by all what thing it is. Not only then is God not understood by all, but both unto the gods and some of the men they out of ignorance do give the name of God, though they can never either be or become, for they are very different from God, while good can never be distinguished from him, for that God is the same as good. The rest of the immortal ones are none the less honored with the name of God, and spoken of as gods. But God is good, not out of the courtesy, but out of nature. For that God's nature and the good is one. One is the kind of both, from which all other things proceed. The good is he who gives all things and not deceives. The good is he who gives all things and not receives. God then doth give all things and receive not. God then is good, and good is God. The other name of God is Father, again because he is that which maketh all. The part of the Father is to make. Wherefore child-making is a very great and most pious thing in life for them who think aright. And to leave on earth without a child a very great misfortune and impiety. And he who hath no child is punished by the demons after death. The glory of all things is good, Godhead and godly nature. Source of the things that are is God, who is both mind and nature. Yes, matter, the wisdom that reveals all things. Source, too, is Godhead. Yes, nature, energy, necessity, and end making new again. Darkness that knew no bounds was in abyss, and water too, and subtle breath intelligent. These were by power of God in chaos. Then holy light arose, and there collected neath dry space from out moist essence elements. And all the gods do separate things out from fecund nature. All things being undefined and yet unwrought, the light things were assigned unto the height. The heavy ones had their foundations laid down underneath the moist part of trispace. The universal things, they bounded off by fire and hanged in breath to keep them up. And heaven was seen in 7 circles. Its gods were visible in forms of stars with all their signs. While nature had her members made articulate together with the gods in her, and heaven's periphery revolved in cyclic course, borne on by breath of God. And every god by his own proper power brought forth what was appointed him. Thus there arose 4-footed beasts and creeping things, and those that in the water dwell, and things with wings, and everything that beareth seed and grass and shoot of every flower, all having in themselves seed of again becoming. And they selected out of the births of men for gnosis of the works of God and attestation of the energy of nature, the multitude of men for lordship over all beneath the heaven and gnosis of its blessings, that they might increase in increasing and multiply in multitude, and every soul enfleshed by revolution of the cyclic gods, for observation of the marvels of heaven and God's revolution, and of the works of God and energy of nature, for tokens of its blessings, for gnosis of the power of God, that they might know the fates that follow good and evil, and learn the cunning work of all good arts. Thus there begins their living and their growing wise, according to the fate appointed by the revolution of the cyclic gods, and their deceasing for this end. And there shall be memorials mighty, of their handiworks upon the earth, leaving dim trace behind when cycles are renewed. For every birth of flesh and soul, and of the fruit of seed, and every handiwork, though its decay, shall of necessity renew itself, both by the renovation of the gods and by the turning round of nature's rhythmic wheel. For that whereas the Godhead is nature's ever making new again the cosmic mixture, nature herself is also co-established in that Godhead. Chapter 4. The Cup or the Monad. This short text gives an unusually lucid overview of the foundations of Hermetic thought. The stress on rejection of the body and its pleasures, and on the division of humanity into those with mind and those without, are reminiscent of some of the so-called Gnostic writings of the same period. The idea that the division is a matter of choice, on the other hand, is a pleasant variation on the almost Calvinist flavor of writings, such as the Apocalypse of Adam. Hermes. With reason, not with hands, did the world maker make the universal world, so that thou shouldst think of him as everywhere and ever being, the author of all things, and one and only, who by his will all things hath been created. The body of him is a thing no man can touch, or see, or measure, a body inextensible, like to no other frame. 'Tis neither fire nor water, air nor breath, yet all of them come from it. Now being good-willed, he too consecrate this body to himself alone, and sets its earth in order and adorn it. So down to earth he sent the cosmos of his frame divine, man, a life that cannot die, and yet a life that dies. And over all other lives, and over cosmos too, did man excel by reason of the reason and the mind. For a contemplator of God's works did man become. He marveled and did strive to know their author. Reason indeed, O Tat, among all men hath he distributed, but mind not yet, not that he grudgeth any, for grudging cometh not from him, but has its place below, within the souls of men who have no mind. Tat. Why then did God, O Father, not on all bestow a share of mind? He willed, my son, to have it set up in the midst for souls, just as it were a prize. And where hath he set it up? He filled a mighty cup with it, and sent it down, joining a herald to it, to whom he gave commands to make this proclamation to the hearts of men. Baptize thyself with this cup's baptism. What heart can do so? Thou that hast faith, thou canst ascend to him that hath sent down the cup. Thou that dost know for what thou'st come into being. As many then as understood the herald's tidings, and doused themselves in mind, became partakers in the gnosis. And when they had received the mind, they were made perfect men. But they who do not understand the tidings, these, since they possess the aid of reason and not mind, are ignorant wherefore they have come into being and whereby. The senses of such men are like irrational creatures, and as their whole makeup is in their feelings and their impulses, they fail in all appreciation of those things which really are worth contemplation. These center all their thought upon the pleasures of the body and its appetites, and the belief that for its sake man hath come into being. But they who have received some portion of God's gift, these, Tat, if we judge by their deeds, have from death's bond won their release. For they embrace in their own mind all things, things on the earth, things in the heaven, and things above the heaven. And having raised themselves so far, they sight the good, and having sighted it, they look upon their sojourn here as a mischance, and in disdain of all, both things in body and the bodiless. They speed their way unto that one and only one. This is, O Tat, the gnosis of the mind, vision of things divine. God knowledge is it, for the cup is God's. Father, I too would be baptized. Unless thou first shall hate thy body, son, thou canst not love thyself. But if thou lovest thyself, thou shalt have mind, and having mind thou shalt share in the gnosis. Father, what dost thou mean? It is not possible, my son, to give thyself to both. I mean to things that perish and to things divine. For seeing that existing things are twain, body and bodiless, in which the perishing and the divine are understood. The man who hath the will to choose is left the choice of one or the other, for it can never be twain should meet. And in those souls to whom the choice is left, the waning of the one causes the other's growth to show itself. Now the choosing of the better not only proves a lot most fair for him who makes the choice, seeing it makes the man a god, but also shows his piety to God. Whereas the choosing of the worse, although it doth destroy the man, it doth only disturb God's harmony to this extent, that as processions pass by in the middle of the way, without being able to do anything but take the road from others, so do such men in procession through the world led by their body's pleasures. This being so, O Tat, what comes from God hath been and will be ours. But that which is dependent on ourselves, let this press onward and have no delay, for 'tis not God. 'Tis we who are the cause of evil things, preferring them to good. Thou seest, son, how many are the bodies through which we have to pass. Thou seest, son, how many are the bodies through which we have to pass. How many are the choirs of daemons, how vast the system of the star courses, to hasten to the one and only God. For to the good there is no other shore, it hath no bounds, it is without an end, and for itself it is without beginning too, though unto us it seemeth to have one. The Gnosis. Therefore to it Gnosis is no beginning, rather is it to us the first beginning of its being known. Let us lay hold, therefore, of the beginning, and quickly speed through all we have to pass. 'Tis very hard. 'Tis very hard to leave the things we have grown used to, which meet our gaze on every side and turn ourselves back to the old paths. Appearances delight us, whereas things which appear not make their believing hard. And now evils are the more apparent things, whereas the good can never show itself unto the eyes, for it hath neither form nor figure. Therefore the good is like itself alone, and unlike all things else, or 'tis impossible that that which hath no body should make itself apparent to a body. The like's superiority to the unlike, and the unlike's inferiority unto the like, consists in this: the oneness being source and root of all, is in all things as root and source. Without this source is not, whereas the source itself is from naught but itself, since it is source of all the rest. It is itself its source, since it may have no other. The oneness then being source, containeth every number, but is contained by none. Engineereth every number, but is engineered by no one. Now all that is engendered is imperfect, it is divisible, to increase subject and to decrease, but with the perfect one none of these things doth hold. Now that which is increasable increases from the oneness, but succumbs through its own feebleness when it can no longer contain the one. And now, God's image hath been sketched for thee, as far as it can be, And if thou wilt attentively dwell on it and observe it with thine heart's eyes, believe me, thou shalt find the path that leads above. Nay, that image shall become thy guide itself, because the sight hath this peculiar charm. It holds fast and draws unto those who succeed in opening their eyes, just as they say, the magnet draws iron. Chapter 5. Though unmanifest, God is most manifest. This sermon is a fairly straightforward Hermetic version of the argument by design, a standard approach since ancient times to a proof of the existence of God. Typically, for a Hermetic tractate, its choice of evidence includes a paean on the beauty and perfection of the human form. We begin. I will recount to thee this sermon too, O Tat, that thou mayest cease to be without the mysteries of the God beyond all name. And mark thou well how that which to the many seems unmanifest will grow most manifest for thee. Now were it manifest, it would not be. For all that is made by manifest is subject to becoming, for it hath been made manifest. But the unmanifest forever is, for it doth not desire to be made manifest. Ever it is, and maketh manifest all things. But being himself unmanifest, as ever being and ever making manifest, himself is not made manifest. God is not made by himself by thinking manifest, i.e. thinking into existence. He thinketh all things manifest. Now thinking manifest deals with things made alone, for thinking manifest is nothing else than making. He then alone who is not made, 'tis clear, is both beyond all power of thinking manifest and is unmanifest. And as he thinketh all things manifest, he manifests through all things and in all, and most of all in whatsoever things he wills to manifest. Shit's so like it makes sense, but it doesn't. Do thou then, Tat, my son, pray first unto our Lord and Father, the one and only one, from whom the one doth come, to show his mercy unto thee, in order that thou mayest have the power to catch a thought of this so mighty God, one single beam of him to shine into thy thinking, for thought alone sees the unmanifest, in that it is itself unmanifest. If then thou hast the power, he will Tat manifest to thy mind's eyes. The Lord begrudgeth not himself to anything, but manifests himself through the whole world. Thou hast the power of taking thought, of seeing it and grasping it in thy own hands, and gazing face to face upon God's image. But if what is within thee even is unmanifest to thee, how then shall he himself who is within thyself be manifest for thee by means of outer eyes? But if thou wouldst see him, bethink thee of the sun, bethink thee of moon's course, bethink thee of the order of the stars. Who is the one who watcheth? Who is the one who watcheth over that order? For every order hath its boundaries, and marked out by place and number. The sun's the greatest god of gods in heaven, to whom all the heavenly gods give place as unto king and master, and he, this so great one, he greater than the earth and sea, endures to have above him circling smaller stars than him, out of respect to whom, or out of fear of whom, my son, doth he do this? Not like nor equal is the course each of these stars describes in heaven. Who then is he who marketh out the manner of their course and who then is he who marketh out of the manner of their course and its extent? The bear up there that turneth round itself and carries round the whole cosmos with it. Who is the owner of this instrument? Who he hath set round the sea its bounds? Who has set the seat the earth? For tat, there is someone who is the maker and Lord of all these things. It counts not be that number, place, and measure could be kept without someone to make them. No order whatsoever could be made by that which lacketh place and lacketh measure. Nay, even this is not without a Lord, my son. For if the orderless lacks something, and that it is not Lord of order's path, it also is beneath a Lord, the one who hath not yet ordained it order. Would that it were possible for thee to get thee wings and soar into the air, and poised midway tween earth and heaven, behold the earth's solidity, the sea's fluidity, the spaciousness of air, fire's swiftness, and the coursing of the stars, the swiftness of heaven's circuit around them all. Most blessed sight were it, my son, to see all these beneath one sway, the motionless in motion, and the unmanifest made manifest, whereby is made this order of the cosmos, and the cosmos which we see of order. If thou wouldst see him too through things that suffer death both on the earth and in the deep, think of a man's being fashioned in the womb, my son, and strictly scrutinize the art of him who fashions him, and learn who fashions this fair and godly image of man. Who then is he who traceth out of the circles of the eyes? Who is it who boreth out the nostrils and the ears? Who that opens the portals of the mouth? Who stretches out and ties the nerves? Who channels out the veins? Hardens the bones? Covers the flesh with skin? Who separates the fingers and the joints? Who widens out a treading for the feet? Who diggeth out the ducts? Who spreadeth out the spleen? Who shapeth the heart to a pyramid? Who settles ribs? Who wideneth the liver? Who maketh lungs like a sponge? Who maketh belly stretch so much? Who makes prominent the parts most honorable, so that they may be seen while hiding out of sight those of least honor? Behold, how many arts employed on one material, how many labors on one single sketch, and all exceeding fair and all in perfect measure, yet all diversified. Who made them all? What mother or what sire, save God alone, unmanifest made, hath made all things by his will? And no one saint, a statue, or a picture comes to be without a sculpture or without a painter. Doth then such workmanship as this exist without a worker? What depth of blindness, what deep impiety, what depth of ignorance! See then thou never, son Tat, deprivest works of worker. Rather he greater than all names, so great is he, the Father of them all, for verily he is the only one, and this is his work to be a father. So if thou forcest me, somewhat too bold to speak, his being is conceiving of all things and making them, and without its marker it is impossible that anything should be. So ever he is not, unless he ever makes all things in heaven, in air, in earth, in deep, in all of cosmos, and every part that is and that is not of everything. For there is not in all the world that is he not. He is himself, both things that are and things that are not. The things that are he hath made manifest. He keepeth things that are not in himself still. He is the God beyond all name. He is the unmanifest. He is the most manifest. He whom the mind alone can contemplate. He visible to the eyes as well. He is one of no body, the one of many bodies. Nay, rather, he of every body. Naught is there which he is not, for all are he, and he is all. And for this cause hath he all names, and that they are one Father's. And for this he cause hath himself no name, and that he is Father of them all. Who then may sing thee praise of thee, or praise to thee? Whither again am I turn my eyes to sing thy praise, above, below, within, and without? There is no way, no place is there about thee, nor any other things of things that are. All are in thee, all are from thee. O thou who givest all and takest not, for thou hast all, and naught is there thou hast not. And when, O Father, shall I hymn thee? For none can seize thy hour or time. For what again shall I sing him? For things that thou hast made, or things thou hast not. For things thou hast made manifest, or things that you have concealed. How further shall I hymn to you? As being of myself, as having something of mine own, as being other. For that thou art whatever I may be, you are whatever I may do, you are whatever I may speak. For you are all, and there is nothing else which you are not. You are all that which does exist, and you are what does not exist. Mind when you thinkest, and Father when you makest, and God when you do energize, and good and maker of all things. For that the subtler part of matter is the air, of air the soul, of soul the mind, and of mind God. Chapter 6. In God alone is good, and elsewhere nowhere. This sermon on the nature of the good, like to Asclepius in chapter 2, relies heavily on the technical language of classical Greek philosophy, a point which some of Mead's translations tend to obscure. The good in Greek thought is also the self-caused and self-sufficient, and thus has little in common with later conceptions of goodness, just as the Latin word virtus and the modern Christian concept of virtue are very nearly opposites despite their etymological connection. The word passion here also needs to be understood in its older sense, as the opposite of action, similar to the differences between active and passive. The negative attitude toward humanity and the cosmos which appear in this text contrasts sharply with the more positive assessment found, for example, in Poemandres in chapter 1, a reminder that these documents are relics of a diverse and not necessarily consistent school of thought. We begin. Good, O Asclepius, is in none else save in God. Nay, rather good is God himself, eternally. If it be so, good must be essence. From every kind of motion, and becoming free, thought not is free from it. Possessed of stable energy around itself, never too little nor too much, an ever full supply. Though one, yet it is. Though one, yet it is source of all. For what supplieth all is good. When I moreover say, supplieth altogether all, it is forever good. But this belongs to no one else save God alone. For he stands not in need of anything, so that desiring it he should be bad, nor can a single thing of things that are to be lost. on losing which he should be pained, for pain is part of bad. Nor is there aught superior to him, that he should be subdued by it, nor any peer to him to do him wrong, or so that he should fall in love on its account, nor aught that gives no ear to him, whereas he should grow angry, nor wiser aught for him to envy. Now as all these are non-existent in his being, what is there left but good alone? For just as naught of bad is to be found in such transcendent being, so too in no one of the rest will be good found. For in them are all of the other things, those things which are not good, both in the little and the great, both in each severally, and in this living one that's greater than them all, and the mightiest of them, the cosmos. For things subject to birth abound in passions, birth in itself being passable. But where there's passion, nowhere is there good, and where is good, nowhere a single passion. For where is day, nowhere is night, and where is night, day is nowhere. Wherefore in Genesis the good can never be found, but only to be in the ingenerate. But seeing that the sharing in all things hath been bestowed on matter, so doth it share in good. In this way is the cosmos good, that in so far as it doth make all things, as far as it making goes it's good. But in all things it is not good, for it's both passible and subject unto motion, and maker of things passible. Whereas in man by greater or less of bad is good determined. For what is it not too bad down here is good, and good down here is the least part of bad. It cannot, therefore, be that good down here should be quite clean of bad, for down here good is fouled with bad, and being fouled, it stays no longer good, and staying not, it changes into bad. In God alone, therefore, is good, or rather good is God himself. So then, Asclepius, the name alone of good is found in men, the thing itself nowhere in them, for this can never be, for no material body doth contain it, a thing bound on all sides by bad, by labors, pains, desires, and passions, by error, and by foolish thoughts. And greatest ill of all, Asclepius, is that each of these things that have been said above is thought down here to be the greatest good. And what is still an even greater ill is belly lust, the error that doth lead the band of all the other ills, the thing that makes us turn down here from God. And I, for my part, give thanks to God, that he hath cast it into my mind about the gnosis of the good, that it can never be, it should be in the world, for that the world is fullness of the bad, but God of good, and good of God. The excellencies of the beautiful are round the very essence of the good. Nay, they do seem too pure, too unalloyed, perchance 'tis they that are themselves its essences. For one may dare say, Asclepius, if essence soothe, he have God's essence is the beautiful. The beautiful is further also good. There is no good that can be got from objects in the world, for all the things that fall beneath the eye are image things and pictures as it were, while those that do not meet the eye, those are the realities, especially the essence of the beautiful and good. Just as the eye cannot see God, so can it not behold the beautiful and good, for that they are integral parts of God, wedded to him alone, inseparate familiars, most beloved, with whom God is himself in love, or they with God. If thou canst God conceive, thou shalt conceive the beautiful and good, transcending light, made lighter than the light by God, that beauty is beyond compare, imitate that good, even as God is himself. As then thou dost conceive of God, conceive the beautiful and good, for they cannot be joined with aught of other things that live, since they can never be divorced from God. Seekest thou for God, thou seekest for the beautiful. One is the path that leadeth unto it, devotion joined with gnosis. And thus it is they who do not know and do not tread devotion's path do dare to call man beautiful and good, though he have never even in his visions seen a whit that's good, but is enveloped with every kind of bad, and thinks the bad is good, and thus doth make unceasing use of it, and even feareth that it should be taken from him, so straining every nerve not only to preserve but even to increase it. Such are the things that men call good and beautiful, Asclepius, things that we cannot flee or hate. For hardest thing of all is that we've need of them. For hardest thing of all is that we've need of them and cannot live without them. Chapter 7. The greatest ill among men is ignorance of God. A good, solid diatribe in colorful language. One easily imagines it being delivered at the Hermetic equivalent of a tent revival meeting. And we begin. Whither ye stumble, ye sots, who have stopped up the wine of ignorance, and can so far not carry it that ye already even spew it forth. Stay, be sober, gaze upwards with the true eyes of the heart. And if ye cannot all, yet ye at least who can. For that the ill of ignorance doth pour over all the earth, and overwhelm the soul that's battened down within the body, preventing it from fetching port within salvation's harbor. Be ye then not carried off by the fierce flood, but causing the shore current. Ye who can make for salvation's port, and harboring there seek ye for one to take you by the hand, and lead you unto Gnosis' gate, where shines clear light of every darkness clean, where not a single soul is drunk, but sober all they gaze with their heart's eyes on him who willeth to be seen. No ear can hear him, nor can eye see him, nor tongue speak of him, but only mind and heart. But first thou must tear off from thee the cloak which thou dost wear, the web of ignorance, the ground of bad, corruption's chain, the carapace of darkness, the living death, sensation's corpse, the tomb thou carriest with thee, the robber in thy house, who through the things he loveth hateth thee, and through the things he hateth bears thee malice. Such is the hateful cloak thou wearest, that throttles thee and holds thee down to it, in order that thou mayest not gaze above, and having seen the beauty of the truth and good that dwells therein, detest the bad of it, having found out the plot that it hath schemed against thee, by making void of sense those seeming things which men think senses. For that it hath with massive matter blocked them up and crammed them full of lonesome lust, so that thou mayest not hear about the things that thou shouldst hear, nor see the things that you should see. Chapter 8. That no one of existing things doth perish, but men in error speak of their changes as destructions and deaths. The idea of cyclic change central to Chapter 3, the Sacred Sermon, also takes center stage here. A current of ancient speculation grounded in astrology held that as the planets returned after vast cycles of time to the same positions, so all events on Earth would repeat themselves precisely into eternity into the future, and had done so from eternity in the past. The technical term for this reoccurrence, apokatastasis, is the word Mead translates as restoration in the beginning of section 4. Mead footnotes this tractate as obscure and faulty in places, and his translation of the beginning of section 3 is conjectural. Concerning soul and body, son, we now must speak. In what way soul is deathless, and whence comes the activity in composing and dissolving body? For there's no death for aught of things that are. The thought this word conveys is either void of fact or simply by the knocking off a syllable what is called death. For death is of destruction, and nothing in the cosmos is destroyed. For if cosmos is second God, a life or living creature that cannot die, it cannot be that any part of this immortal life should die. All things in cosmos are parts of cosmos, and most of all is man, the rational animal. For truly, first of all, eternal and transcending birth is God, the universal's maker. Second is he after his image. Cosmos brought into being like him, by him, sustained and fed by him, made deathless, as by his own sire, living for aye as ever free from death. For that which ever liveth differs from the eternal, for he hath not been brought to being by another, and even if he have been brought to being, he hath not been brought to being by himself, but ever is brought into being. For the eternal, and that it is eternal, is the all. The Father is himself eternal of himself, but cosmos hath become eternal and immortal by the Father. And of the matter stored beneath, as in beneath the cosmos, the Father made of it a universal body, and packing it together made it spherical, wrapping it round the life, a sphere which is immortal in itself, and that doth make materiality eternal. But he, the Father, fulfilled with his ideas, did sow the lives into the sphere, and shut them in as a cave, willing to order forth the life with every kind of living. So he with deathlessness enclosed the universal body, that matter might not wish to separate itself from body's composition, and so dissolve into its own original unorder. For matter, son, when it was yet incorporate, for matter, son, when it was not yet formed into bodies, was in unorder, and it doth still retain down here this nature or unorder, enveloping the rest of the small lives, including the small creatures, that increase and decrease, which men call death. It is round earthly lives that this unorder doth exist, for that the bodies of the heavenly ones preserve one order allotted to them by the Father as their rule, and it is by the restoration of each one of them this order is preserved indissolute. The restoration of bodies on the earth is thus their composition, whereas their dissolution restores them to those bodies which can never be dissolved, that is to say, which know no death. Privation, thus, of sense is brought about, not loss of bodies. Now the third life, man, after the image of the cosmos, made and having mind, after the Father's will, beyond all earthly lives, not only doth have feeling with the second God, which is the cosmos, but also hath conception of the first. For of the one 'tis sensible as of a body, while the other it conceives as bodiless and the good mind. Tat replies, Doth then this life not perish? This life we live, does it not end? Hush, son, and understand what God, what cosmos is, what is a life that cannot die, and what a life subject to dissolution. Yes, understand the cosmos is by God and in God, but man by cosmos and in cosmos. The source and limit and the constitutions of all things is God. Chapter 9, on Thought and Sense. This somewhat diffuse essay covers a series of topics, starting with and to some extent from the concept that the set of perceptions we call thoughts and the set we call sensory perceptions are not significantly different from one another. The implications of this idea play a significant role in later Hermetic thought, particularly in the areas of magic and the art of memory. In this tractate, though, the issues involved are barely touched, and the argument wanders into moral dualisms and the equally important, but distinct, idea that the cosmos is itself a divine creative power. Section 10, in which understanding is held up as the source and precondition of belief, should probably be seen as part of the same ancient debate on the roles of faith and reason that gave rise to Tertullian's famous Credo qua absurdum, which means I believe because it is absurd. So we begin. I gave the perfect sermon yesterday, Asclepius. Today I think it right, as sequel thereunto, to go through point by point the sermon about sense. Now sense and thought do seem to differ, in that the former has to do with matter, the latter has to do with substance. But unto me both seem to be at one and not to differ. In men, I mean, and other lives or living creatures, sense is at one end with nature, but in men, thought. Now mind doth differ just as much from thought as God doth from divinity. For that divinity by God doth come to be, and by mind thought, the sister of the word and instruments of one another. For neither doth the word find utterance without thought, nor is thought manifest without word. So sense and thought both flow together into man as though they were entwined with one another. For neither without sensing can one think, nor without thinking can one sense. But it is possible, they say, to think a thing apart from sense, as those who fancy sights in dreams. But unto me it seems that both of these activities occur in dream sight, and sense doth pass out of the sleeping to the waking state. For man is separated into soul and body, and only when the two sides of his sense agree together does utterance of its thought conceived by man take place. For it is mind that conceives all thoughts, good thoughts when it receives the seeds from God, their contrary when it receives them from the daimonials. No part of cosmos being free of daemon, who stealthily creeps into the demons who illumine by God's light, as in the human soul, and sow in him the seed of its own energy. And mind conceives the seed thus sown: adultery, murder, parricide and sacrilege, impiety and strangling, casting down precipices, and all such other deeds are as the work of evil demons. The seeds of God, 'tis true, are few, but vast and fair and good, virtue and self-control, devotion. Devotion is God gnosis, and he who knoweth God, being filled with all good things, thinks godly thoughts and not thoughts like the many. For this cause they who Gnostic are, please not the many, nor the many them. They are thoughts mad. They are thought mad and laughed at. They are hated and despised, and sometimes even put to death. For we did say that bad must needs dwell on earth, where 'tis in its own place. Its place is earth, and not the cosmos, as some will sometimes say with impious tongue. But he who is devotee of God will bear with all. Once he has sensed the gnosis, for such and one all things, even though they be for others bad, are for him good. Deliberately he does refer them all unto the gnosis, and things most marvelous. 'Tis he alone who maketh bad things good. But I return once more to the discourse on sense, that sense does share with thought in man, does constitute him man. But 'tis not every man, as I have said, who benefits by thought, for this man is material, that other one substantial. For the material man, as I have said, consorting with the bad, does have his seed of thought from demons, while the substantial man consorting with good are saved by God. Now God is maker of all things, and in his making he maketh all at last like to himself. But they, while they're becoming good by exercise of their activity, are unproductive things. It is the working of the cosmic course that makes their becoming what they are, befouling some of them with bad, and others of them making clean with good. For cosmos too, Asclepius, possesseth sense and thought peculiar to itself, not like that of man. 'Tis not so manifold, but as it were a better and a simpler one. The single sense and thought of cosmos is to make all things and make them back into itself again, as organ of the will of God, so energized that it, receiving all the seeds into itself from God, and keeping them within itself, may make all manifest, and then dissolving them, make them all new again, and thus like a good gardener of life, things that have been dissolved it takes to itself, and gives them renewal once again. There is no thing to which it gives not life, but takes all unto itself and makes them living, and it is at same time the place of life and its creator. Now bodies of matter are in diversity, are made in diversity. Some are of earth, other water, some are of air, and some of fire. But they are all composed. Some are more composite and some are simpler. The heavier ones are more composed, the lighter less so. It is the speed of cosmos course that works the manifoldness of the kinds of births. For being a most swift breath, it does bestow their qualities on bodies together with the one pleroma, that of life. God, then, is sire of cosmos, cosmos of all in cosmos, and cosmos is God's son, but things in cosmos are by cosmos. And properly hath it been called cosmos order, for that it orders all with their diversity of birth, with its not leaving aught without its life, with the unweariedness of its activity, the speed of its necessity, the composition of its elements, and order of its creatures. The same, then, necessity and propriety should have the name of order. The sense and thought, then, of all lives does come unto them from without, inbreathed by what contains them all, whereas cosmos receives them once for all together with its coming into being, and keeps them as a gift from God. But God is not, as some suppose, beyond the reach of sense and thought. It is through superstition men thus impiously speak. For all the things that are, Asclepius, are all in God, are brought by God to be, and do depend on him. Both things that act through bodies, and things that through soul substance make, and things that make things live by means of spirit, and things that take unto themselves the things that are worn out. And rightly so. No, I would rather say, he doth not have things, but I speak forth the truth. He is them all himself. He does not get them from without, but gives them out from him. This is God's sense and thought. ever to move all things, and never time shall be whenever a whit of things that are shall cease. And when I say a whit of things that are, I mean a whit of God. For things that are, God hath, nor aught is there without him, nor is he without aught. These things should seem to thee, Asclepius, if thou do understand them, true. But if you do not understand, things not to be believed. To understand is to believe. To not believe is not to understand. My word does go before thee to the truth. But mighty is the mind, and when it hath been led by word up to a certain point, it hath the power to come back before thee to truth. And having thought over all these things, and found them consonant with those which have already been translated by reason, it has even now showed, believed, and found its rest in that fair faith. To those, then, who by God's good aid do understand the things that have been said by us above, they are credible, but unto those who understand them not, incredible. Let so much then suffice on thought and sense. Chapter 10. The Key. This longer tractate presents itself explicitly as a summary or abridgment of the general sermons, chapter 2 through 9, and discusses the Hermetic view of knowledge and its role in the lives and afterlives of human beings. The attentive reader will notice certain contradictions between the afterlife teachings of this and previous tractates. One of the central concepts of the Key and of Hermetic thought generally is the distinction between ordinary discursive knowledge, which can be expressed in words, in Greek episteme, which Mead translates somewhat clumsily as science, and transcendent, unitive knowledge which cannot be communicated, in Greek gnosis, which Mead simply and sensibly leaves untranslated. The same distinction can be found in the many systems of mystical thought. Unlike most of these, though, the Hermetic teachings place value on both. Readers without much experience in the jargon of classical philosophy will want to remember that heilig means material, passible means subject to outside forces or to suffering, and intelligible means belonging to the realm of the mind, and motion includes all kinds of change. The special implications of good in Greek thought, of self-sufficiency and desirability, should also be kept in mind. The delightful irony of the Zen moment early in section 9, when Hermes, in the middle of this very substantial lecture, defines the good and pious man as he who does not say much or lend his ear to much, and thus rules out both himself and his audience, seems to have been lost on subsequent commentators. End chapter preface. Hermes. My yesterday's discourse I did devote to thee, Asclepius, and so 'tis only right I should devote today's to Tat, and this the more because 'tis the abridgment of the general sermons which he has addressed to him. God, Father, and the good. Then Tat hath the same nature, or more exactly energy. For nature is a predicate of growth, and used of things that change, both mobile and immobile, that is to say, both human and divine, each one of which he willeth into being. But energy consists in something else, as we have shown in treating of the rest, both things divine and human things, which thing we ought to have in mind when treating of the good. God's energy is then his will. Further, his essence is to will the being of all things. For what is God and Father and the good, but the to be of all that are not yet? Nay, subsistence, self of everything that is. This, then, is God, this Father, this the good, to him is added not of all the rest. And though the cosmos, that is to say the Son, is also sire himself to them that share in him, yet so far is he not the cause of good unto the lives, he is not even of their living. So that even if he be a sire, he is entirely so by compulsion of the good's good will, apart from which nor being nor becoming could ever be. Again, the parent is the children's cause, both on the father's and the mother's side. Only by sharing in the good's desire that doth pour through the Son, it is the good which doeth the creating. And such a power can be possessed by no one else than him alone who taketh not, but wills all things to be. I will not, say makes. For that the maker is defective for long periods, in which he sometimes makes and sometimes does not make, both in the quality and in the quantity of what he makes. And that he sometimes makes them so many and much like, and sometimes the reverse. But God and Father and the good is cause for all to be. So are at least these things for which who can see. For it doth will to be, and it is both itself and most of all by reason of itself. Indeed, all other things beside are just because of it. For the distinctive feature of the good is that it should be known. Such is the good, O Tat. Tat replies, Thou hast, O Father, filled us so full of this so good and fairest sight, that thereby my mind's eye has now become for me almost a thing to worship. For that the vision of the good does not, like the sun's beam, fire-like blaze on the eyes and make them close. Nay, on the contrary, it shineth forth and maketh to increase the seeing of the eye, as far as ever a man has the capacity to hold the inflow of the radiance that the mind alone can see. Not only does it come more swiftly down to us, but it does us no harm, and is instinct with all immortal life. They who are able to drink in somewhat more than others of this sight, oftentimes from out the body fall asleep in the fairest spectacle, as was the case with Uranus and Cronus, our forebears. May this be our lot too, O Father mine. Hermes replies, Yes, may it be, my son, but as it is, we are not yet strung to the vision. And not as yet have we the power our mind's eye to unfold and gaze upon the beauty of the good, beauty that naught can ever corrupt or any comprehend. For only when wilt thou upon it gaze when thou canst say no word concerning it. For gnosis of the good is holy silence and a giving holiday to every sense, for neither can he perceive aught else, nor he who gazeth on it gaze on aught else, nor hear aught else, nor stir his body any way, staying his body's every sense and every motion he stayeth still, and shining then all around his mind. It shines through his whole soul and draws it out of body, transforming all of him to essence. For it is possible, my son, that a man's soul should be made like to God. Even while it still is in a body, it does contemplate the beauty of the good. Tat responds, Made like to God? What dost thou mean, Father? Hermes, of every soul apart are transformations, son. Tat, what meanest thou apart? Hermes, didst thou not in the general sermons hear that from one soul, the all-soul, come all these souls which are made to revolve in all the cosmos as though divided off? Of these souls, then, it is that there are many changes, some to a happier lot and some to just the contrary of this. Thus, some that were creeping things change into things that in the water dwell. The souls of water things change to the earth dwellers. Those that live on earth change to things with wings, and souls that live in air change to men, while human souls reach the first step of deathlessness changed into daemons. And so they circle to the choir of the inerrant gods, For of the gods there are two choirs, the one inerrant and the other errant. And this is the most perfect glory of the soul. But if a soul on entering the body of a man persisteth in its vice, it neither tasteth deathlessness nor shareth in the good, but speeding back again it churns into the path that leads to creeping things. This is the sentence of the vicious soul. And the soul's vice is ignorance. For that the soul who hath no knowledge of the things that are, or knowledge of their nature, or of good, is blinded by the body's passions and tossed about. This wretched soul, not knowing what she is, becomes the slave of bodies of strange form in sorry plight, bearing the body as a load, not as the ruler, but the ruled. This ignorance is the soul's vice. But on the other hand, the virtue of the soul is gnosis. For he who knows, he good and pious is, and still while on the earth, divine. Tat responds, but who is such one, O Father? Hermes, he who doth not say much or lend his ear to much. For he who spendeth time in arguing and hearing arguments doth shadow fight. For God the Father and the good is not to be obtained by speech or hearing. And yet, though this is so, there are in all the beings senses, and that they cannot without senses be. But gnosis is far different from sense. For sense is brought about by that which has the mastery over us, while gnosis is the end goal of science, and science is God's gift. All science is incorporeal, the instrument it uses being the mind, just as the mind employs the body. Both then come into bodies. I mean both things that are cognizable by mind alone and things material, for all things must consist out of antithesis and contrariety. And this can otherwise not be. Tat. Who then is this material God of whom you speak? Hermes. Cosmos is beautiful, but is not good, for that it is material and freely passable. And though it is the first of all things passable, yet it is in the second rank of being and wanting in itself. And though it never has itself its birth in time, but ever is, yet is its being in becoming for all time the genesis of qualities and quantities, for it is mobile and all material motions genesis. It is intelligible rest that moves material motion in this way, since cosmos is a sphere, that is to say, a head, and not of head above material, as not of feet below intangible, but all material. And head itself is moved in a sphere-like way, that is to say, as head should move, is mind. All then that are united to the tissue of this head, in which is soul, are in their nature free from death, just as when body has been made in soul, are things that have more soul than body. Whereas those things which are at greater distance from this tissue, where are things which have a greater share of body than of soul, are by their nature subject unto death. The whole, however, is a life, so that the universe consists of both the hylic and of the intelligible. Again, the cosmos is the first of living things, while man is second after it, though first of things subject to death. Man hath the same ensouling power in him as all the rest of living things, yet he is not only not good, but even evil, for that he is subject unto death. For though the cosmos also is not good in that it suffers motion, it is not evil, and that it is not subject to death. But man, in that he is subject both to motion and to death, is evil. Now then, the principles of man are this wise vehicled: mind in the reason in the soul, soul in the spirit, and spirit in the body. Spirit pervading body by means of veins and arteries and blood, bestows upon the living creature motion, and as it were doth bear it in a way. For this cause some to think the soul is blood, and that they do mistake its nature, not knowing that at death it is spirit that must first withdraw into the soul, whereon the blood congeals and veins and arteries are emptied, and then the living creature is withdrawn, and this is body's death. Now, from one source all things depend, while source depends from the one and only one. Source is moreover moved to become source again, whereas the one standeth perpetually and is not moved. Three then are they, God the Father and the good, cosmos and man. God does not contain cosmos. God contains cosmos. Cosmos contain man. Cosmos is ever God's son, man as it were cosmos' child. Not that, however, God ignoreth man, nay, right well doth he know him, and willeth to be known. This is the sole salvation for a man, God's gnosis. This is the way up to the mount. By him alone the soul becomes good, not whiles is good, whiles is evil, but good out of necessity. Tat asks, "What dost thou mean, thrice greatest one?" Hermes, "Behold an infant's son that is not yet cut off, because its body is still small and not as yet come into its full bulk." Tat asks, "How?" Hermes, "A thing of beauty altogether is such a soul to see, not yet befouled by body's passions, still all but hanging from the cosmic soul. But when the body grows in bulk and draweth down the soul into its mass, then doth the soul cut off itself and bring upon itself forgetfulness, and no more shareth in the beautiful and the good, and this forgetfulness becomes vice. It is the same for them who go out from the body. For when the soul withdraws into itself, the spirit does contract itself within the blood, and the soul within the spirit, and then the mind, stripped of its wrappings and naturally divine, taking unto itself a fiery body, does traverse every space, after abandoning the soul unto its judgment and whatever chastisement it hath deserved." Tat, "What dost thou, Father, mean by this? The mind is parted from soul and soul from spirit, whereas thou saidst the soul was the mind's vesture and the soul's the spirit." Hermes, "The hearer, son, should think with him who speaks and breathes with him. No, he should have a hearing subtler than the voice of him who speaks. It is in a body made of earth that this arrangement of the vestures comes to pass. For in a body made of earth, it is impossible the mind should take its seat itself by its own self in nakedness. For neither is it possible on the one hand the earthly body should contain so much immortality, nor on the other that so great a virtue should endure a body passible in such close contact with it. It taketh then the soul for as it were an envelope, and soul itself, being two and thing divine, doth use the spirit as an envelope, while spirit doth pervade the living creature. When then the mind does free itself from the earth body, it straightway puts on its proper robe of fire, with which it could not dwell in an earth body. For earth does not bear fire, for it is all set in blaze even by a small spark, and for this cause is water poured around earth, to be a guard and wall, to keep the blazing of the fire away. But mind, the swiftest thing of all divine outthinkings, and swifter than all elements, has for its body fire. For mind, being builder, does use the fire as tool for the construction of all things, the mind of all, the construction of all things, but that of man only for things on earth. Stripped of its fire, the mind on earth cannot make things divine, for it is human in its dispensation. The soul in man, however, not every soul, but one pious, is a demonic something and divine. And such a soul, when from the body freed, if it have fought the fight of piety, the fight of piety is to know God and to do wrong to no man. Such a soul becomes entirely mind, whereas the impious soul remains in its own essence, chastised by its own self, and seeking for an earthly body where to enter, if only be it human. For that no other body can contain a human soul, nor is it right that any human soul should fall into the body of a thing that doth possess no reason. For that the law of God is this, to guard the human soul from such tremendous outrage. Tat asks, how, Father, then is a man's soul chastised? Hermes, what greater chastisement of any human soul can there be, son, than lack of piety? What fire has so fierce a flame as lack of piety? What ravenous beast so mauls the body as lack of piety, the very soul? Dost thou not see what hosts of ills the impious soul doth bear? It shrieks and screams, I burn, I am ablaze, I know not what to cry or do. Ah, wretched me! I am devoured by all the ills that compass me about. Alas, poor me, I neither see nor hear. Such are the cries wrung from a soul chastised, not as the many think, and thou, son, dost suppose that a man's soul passing from body is changed into a beast. Such is a very grave mistake, for that the way a soul does suffer chastisement is this. When mind becomes a demon, the law requires that it should take a fiery body to execute the services of God, and entering in the soul most impious, it scourgeth, and entering in the soul most impious, it scourgeth it with whips made of its sins. And then the impious soul, scourged with its sins, is plunged in murders, outrage, blasphemy, and violence of all kinds, and all the other things whereby mankind is wronged. But on the pious souls the mind doth mount and guide it to the gnosis' light. And such a soul does never tire in songs of praise to God, and pouring blessings on all men, and doing good in work and deed to all, in imitation of its sire. Wherefore, my son, thou shouldst give praise to God, and pray that thou mayest have thy mind good. It is then to a better state the soul doth pass, it cannot to a worse. Further, there is an intercourse of souls. Those of the gods have intercourse with those of men, and those of men with souls of creatures which possess no reason. The higher, further, have in charge the lower. The gods look after men, men after animals irrational, while God has charge of all, for he is higher than them all, and all are less than he. Cosmos is subject then to God, man to the cosmos, and irrationals to man. But God is over them all, and God contains them all. God's rays, to use as a figure, are his energies. The cosmos are nature's. The arts and sciences are man's. The energies act through the cosmos, thence through the nature rays of cosmos upon man. The nature rays act through the elements. Man acteth through the sciences and arts. This is the dispensation of the universe, depending from the nature of the one, pervading all things through the mind, than which is not diviner nor of greater energy, and not a greater means for the atoning men to gods and gods to men. He is the good daemon. Blessed the soul that is most filled with him, and wretched is the soul that's empty of the mind. Tat asks, Father, what dost thou mean again? Hermes, dost thou think then, son, that every soul hath the good mind? For 'tis of him we speak, not of the mind in service of which we were just speaking, the mind sent down for the soul's chastisement. For soul without the mind can neither speak nor act. For oftentimes the mind doth leave the soul, and at that time the soul neither sees nor understands, but is just like a thing that hath no reason. Such is the power of mind. Yet doth it not injure a sluggish soul, but leaveth such a soul tied to the body and bound tight by it. Such soul, my son, does not have mind, And therefore such an one should not be called a man, for that man is a thing of life, divine. Man is not measured with the rest of lives of things upon the earth, but with the lives above in heaven, who are called gods. Nay, if we must boldly speak the truth, the true man is even higher than the gods, or at the very least the gods and men are very wit and power, each with the other equal. For no one of the gods in heaven shall come down to earth, overstepping heaven's limit, whereas man doth mount up to heaven and measure it. He knows what things of it are high, what things are low, and learns precisely all things else besides. And greater thing than all, without even quitting earth, he doth ascend above. So vast a sweep doth he possess of ecstasy. For this cause can a man such dare say that man on earth is God, subject to death, while God in heaven is man, from death immune. Wherefore the dispensation of all things is brought about by means of the twain, cosmos and man, but by the one. Chapter 11. Mind unto Hermes. This complex text is written as a revelation from the divine mind, the man-shepherd of chapter 1. Difficult enough in its own right, it has been made rather more difficult by some of Mede's most opaque prose. I have tried to insert clarifications where these are most needed. Some notes on terminology may also be useful. The term eon here, as in many of the so-called Gnostic writings, refers to the timeless and spaceless realm of ideal being. The word cosmos means both order and beauty. The same root appears in the word cosmetic. Additionally, the words Genesis and becoming in the translation are the same word in the Greek original. Finally, the word inactive in square brackets near the beginning of section 13 is Mede's, intended to fill a lacuna in the text. The more usual conjecture, as he comments, is apart from God. So we begin. A dialogue between mind and Hermes. Mind. Master this sermon, the Logos, then, thrice greatest Hermes, and bear in mind the spoken words. And as it hath come unto me to speak, I will no more delay. I have not learned the truth. Make it then clear to me, O master mine, for I can trust the explanation of these things, which... Hear then, my son, how standeth God? God, eon, cosmos, time, becoming. God maketh eon, eon, cosmos, cosmos, time, and time, becoming, or the birth, the genesis. The good, the beautiful, wisdom, blessedness is the essence, as it were, of God, of eon. The essence is sameness, of cosmos, order, of time, change, and of becoming, life and death. The energies of God are mind and soul of eon, lastingness and deathlessness, of cosmos, restoration and the opposite thereof, of time, increase and decrease, and of becoming, quality. Eon is then in God, cosmos in eon, in cosmos time, in time becoming. Eon stands firm round God, cosmos is moved in eon, time has its limits in the cosmos. Time has its limits in the cosmos. Becoming does become in time. The source, therefore, of all is God, their essence, eon, their matter. God's power is eon. Eon's work is cosmos, which never has become, yet ever doth become by eon. Therefore will cosmos never be destroyed, for eons indestructible, nor doth a whit of things in cosmos perish, for cosmos is enwrapped by eon round on every side. Hermes. But God's wisdom, what is that? Mind. The good and beautiful, and blessedness, and virtues all, and eon. Eon then ordereth cosmos, imparting deathlessness and lastingness to matter. For its beginning does depend on eon, as eon does on God. Now Genesis, birth, and time, in heaven and upon earth are of two natures. In heaven they are unchangeable and indestructible, but on earth they are subject unto change and destruction. Further, the eon's soul is God, the cosmos' soul is eon, the earth's soul, heaven. And God is in mind, and mind in soul, and soul in matter, and all of them through eon. But all this body, in which are all the bodies, is full of soul, and soul is full of mind, and mind of God. The soul fills it, the body of the cosmos, from within and from without encircles it, making the without this vast and perfect life cosmos. Within, it fills it with all lives. Above in heaven continuing in sameness, below on earth changing, becoming. And eon doth preserve this cosmos, or by necessity, or by foreknowledge, or by nature, or by whatever else a man supposes or shall suppose, and all is this God energizing. The energy of God is power that naught can ever surpass, a power with which no one can make comparison of any human thing at all, or any divine thing. Wherefore, never think that aught of things above or things below is like to God, for thou wilt fall. For naught is like to that which hath no like, and is alone, and do not ever think that any other can possibly possess his power. For what apart from him is there of life, and deathlessness and change of quality? For what else should he make? God's not inactive, since all things then would lack activity, for all are full of God. But neither in the cosmos anywhere, nor in aught else are there inaction, for that inaction is a name that cannot be applied to either what does make or. But all things must be made, both ever made, and also in accordance with the influence. For he who makes, not established in some one of them, nor making one thing only, but for being power, he energizeth in the things he makes, and is not independent of them, although the things he makes are subject to him. Now gaze through me upon the cosmos, that's now subject to thy sight, regarding its beauty carefully, body in pure perfection, though one than which there's no more ancient one, ever in prime of life, and ever young, nay, rather in even fuller and yet fuller prime. Behold again the 7 subject worlds, ordered by eon's order, and with their varied course fulfilling eon. See how all things are full of light, and nowhere. For 'tis the love and the blending of the contraries and the dissimilars that does give birth to lights down shining by the energy of God, the Father of all good, the leader of all order, and the ruler of the 7 world orderings. Behold the moon, forerunner of them all, the instrument of nature and the transmuter of its lower matter. Look at the earth set in the midst of all, foundation of the cosmos beautiful, feeder and nurse of things on earth, and contemplate the multitude of deathless lives, how great it is, and that of lives subject to death, and midway between both immortal lives and mortal, see thou the circling moon. And all are full of soul, and all are moved by it, each in its proper way, some round the heaven, others around the earth. See how the right move not unto the left, nor yet the left unto the right, nor the above below, nor the below above. And that all there are subject unto Genesis, my dearest Hermes. Thou hast no longer need, for that they bodies are, have soul, but 'tis impossible for them to come together into one without someone to bring them all together. It must then be that such a one as this must be someone who's wholly one. For as the many motions of them all are different, and as their bodies are not like, yet has one speed been ordered from them all, it is impossible that there should be two or more makers for them, for that one single order is not kept among the many, but rivalry will follow of the weaker with the stronger, and they will survive. And if the maker of the lives that suffer change and death should be another from the maker of the immortals, he would desire to make the deathless ones as well, just as the maker of the deathless ones to make the lives. But come, if there be two, its matters one, and soul is one. In whose hands would there be the distribution for the making? Again, if both of them have some of it, in whose hands may be? But thus conceive it then, that every living body does consist of soul and matter, whether that body be of an immortal or a mortal or an irrational life. For that all living bodies are ensouled, whereas, upon the other hand, those that live not are matter by it. And in like fashion, soul, when in itself, is, after its own maker, cause of life. But the cause of all life is he who makes the things that cannot die. Hermes, how then is it that first lives subject to death are other than the deathless ones? And next, how is it that life which knows no death and maketh deathlessness doth not make animal mind? First, that there's someone who does these things is clear, and next, that he is also one is. For also, soul is one, and life is one, and matter one. Hermes, but who is he? Mind. Who may it other be than the one God? Whom else should it beseem to put soul into lives but God alone? One then is God. It would indeed be most ridiculous if, when thou dost confess the cosmos to be one, sun one, moon one, and that thou shouldst wish God himself to be someone or other of a number. All things, therefore, he makes in many ways, and what great thing is it for God to make life, soul, and deathlessness, and change, when thou thyself dost do so many things? For thou dost see and speak and hear and smell and taste and touch and walk and think and breathe. And it is not one who smells, another one who walks, another one who thinks, and yet another, but one is he who does all these. And yet no one of these could be apart from God. For just as, should thou cease from these, thou wouldst no longer be a living thing, so also should God cease from them, a thing not law to say, no longer is he God. For if it hath been shown that no thing can inactive be, how much less of God? For if there's aught he does not make, if it be a law to say, he is imperfect. But if he is not only inactive but perfect God, then he doth make all things. Give thou thyself to me, my Hermes, for a little while, and thou shalt understand more easily how that God's work is one, in order that all things may be, that are being made, or once have been, or that are going to be made. And this is, my beloved, life. This is the beautiful. This is the good. This, God. And if thou wouldst in practice understand this work, behold what taketh place in thee desiring to beget. Yet this is not like unto that, for he doth not enjoy. For that indeed he has no other one to share in what he works for. For working by himself he is ever at work, himself being what he does. For did he separate himself from it, all things would then collapse, and all must die, life ceasing. But if all things are lives, and also life is one, then one is God. And furthermore, if all lives, both those in heaven and earth, and one life in them, all is made to be God, and God is it. God is the one life. Then all are made by God. Life is the making one of mind and soul. Accordingly, death is not the destruction of those that are at one, but the dissolving of their union. Eon, moreover, is God's image. Cosmos is eons, the son of Cosmos, and man the image of the sun. The people call change death, because the body is dissolved, and life, when it's dissolved, withdraws to the unmanifest. But in this sermon, Hermes, my beloved, as thou dost hear, I say the cosmos also suffers change, for that a part of it each day is made to be in the unmanifest, yet it is never dissolved. These are the passions of the cosmos, revolvings and concealments. Revolvings is conversion, and concealment renovation. The cosmos is all formed, not having forms external to itself, but changing them itself within itself. Since then cosmos is made to be all formed, what may its maker be? For that on the one hand he should not be void of all forms, and on the other hand, if he is all formed, he will be like the cosmos. Whereas again he is a single form, he will thereby be less than cosmos. What then say we who he is, that we may not bring round our sermon into doubt? For not that mind conceives of God is doubtful. He then hath one idea, which is his own alone, which does not fall beneath the sight, being bodiless, and yet by means of bodies manifesteth all ideas, and marvel not that there is a bodiless idea. For it is like the form of reason, logos, and mountain top, for they appear to stand out strongly from the rest, but really are quite smooth and flat. And now consider what is said more boldly, but more truly. Just as man cannot live apart from life, so neither can God live without his doing so. For this is as it were the life and motion, as it were, of God, to move all things and to make them live. Now some of the things said should bear a sense of peculiarity to themselves. So understand, for instance, what I'm going to say. All are in God, but not as lying in a place. For place is both a body and immovable, and things that lie do not have. Now things lie one way in the bodiless, another way in being made manifest. Think then of him who doth contain them all, and think that then the bodiless not is more comprehensive, or swifter, or more potent, but it is the most comprehensive, the swiftest and most potent of them all. And thus think from thyself, and bid thy soul go unto any land, and there more quickly than by biding will it be, and bid it journey oceanwards, and there again immediately 'twill be, not as if passing on from one place, but as if being there. and bid it also mount to heaven. And it will need no wings, not will aught hinder it, nor fire of sun, nor author, nor vortex swirl, nor bodies of the other stars, but cutting through them all, it will soar up to the last body of them all. And shouldst thou will to break through this as well, and contemplate what is beyond, if there be aught beyond the cosmos, it is permitted to thee. Behold, what power, what swiftness thou dost have, and canst thou do all of things, and God not do to them. Then in this way know God as having all things in himself, as thoughts the whole cosmos itself. If then thou dost not make thyself like unto God, thou canst not know him, for like is knowable unto like alone. Make then thyself to grow to the same stature as the greatness which transcends all measures. Leap forth from every body. Transcend all time, become eternity, literally eon, and thus shalt thou know God. Conceiving nothing is impossible unto thyself. Think thyself deathless and able to know all arts, all sciences, the way of every life. Become more lofty than all heights and lower than all depth. Collect into thyself all senses of all creatures of fire and water, dry and moist. Think that thou art in the same place in every place, in earth, sea, in sky, not yet begotten, in the womb, young, old, and dead in after-death conditions. And if thou knowest all things at once, times, places, doings, qualities, and quantities, thou canst know. But if thou lockest up thy soul, and dost debase it, saying, I know nothing, I nothing can, I fear the sea, I cannot sail the sky, I know not who I was, who I shall be, what is there then between thy God and thee? For thou canst know not of things beautiful and good so long as thou dost love thy body and art bad. The greatest bad there is not to know God's good, but to be able to know good. And will and hope is a straight way, the good's own path, both leading there and easy. If thou but settest thy foot thereon, 'twill meet thee everywhere. 'Twill meet everywhere, be seen, both where and when thou dost expect it not, waking, sleeping, sailing, journeying, by night, by day, speaking and saying not, for there is If thou but settest thy foot thereon, 'twill meet thee everywhere. 'Twill both where and when thou dost expect it not, waking, sleeping, sailing, journeying, by night, by day, speaking and saying not, for there is not that is not image of the good. Hermes replies, Is God unseen? Mind, hush! Who is more manifest than he? For this one reason has he made all things, that through them all thou mayest see him. This is the good of God. This is his virtue, that he may be manifest through all. For even of things that are without a body, mind sees itself in thinking, God in making. So far these things have been made manifest to thee, thrice greatest one. Reflect on all the rest in the same way with thyself, and thou shalt not be led astray. Chapter 12. About the common mind. The common mind discussed in this dialogue is the same mind which appears as a divine power in other parts of the Hermetic literature. It is identical as well with the good daemon whose words are quoted at several points here and elsewhere. The Greek word logos, which means both word and reason, amongst other things, is central to much of the argument, and it's unfortunate that English has no way to express the same complex of meanings. The praise of reason in parts 13 through 14 is also and equally a praise of human language, and this sort of double meaning plays a part elsewhere in this and other parts of the Hermetic literature. Begin chapter 12. Hermes. The mind, O Tat, is of God's very essence, if such a thing as essence of God there be. And what that is, it and it only knows precisely. The mind then is not separated of God's essentialness, but is united to it, as light to sun. This mind in men is God, and for this cause some of mankind are gods, and their humanity is nigh unto divinity. For the good Damon said, Gods are immortal men, and men are mortal gods. But in irrational lives, mind is their nature, for where is soul, there too is mind. Just as where life, there is also soul. But in irrational lives, their soul is life devoid of mind, for mind is in the worker of the souls of men for good. He works on them for their own good. In lives irrational, he doth cooperate with each one's nature, but in the souls of men he can counteract them. For every soul, when it becomes embodied, is instantly depraved by pleasure and by pain. For in a compound body, just like juices, pain and pleasure seethe, and into them the soul, or entering in, is plunged. Over whatsoever souls the mind doth then precede, to these it shows its own light, by acting counter to their prepossessions, just as a good physician doth upon the body prepossessed by sickness, pain, inflict, burning, or lancing it for the sake of health. In just the self-same way the mind inflicteth pain on the soul, to rescue it from pleasure, whence comes its every ill. The great ill of the soul is godlessness. Then followeth fancy for all evil things and nothing good. So then, mind counteracting it doth work on the soul, as the physician health upon the body. But whatsoever human souls have not the mind as pilot, they share in the same fate as souls of lives irrational. For mind becomes co-worker with them, giving full play to the desires toward which souls are born, desires that from the rush of lust strain after the irrational, so that such human souls, just like mind, becomes co-worker for them, giving full play to the desires toward which souls are. But whatsoever human souls have not the mind as pilot, they share in the same fate as souls of lives irrational. For mind becomes co-worker with them, giving full play to the desires toward which souls are born, desires that form the rush of lust strain after the irrational, so that such human souls, just like irrational animals, cease not irrationally to rage in lust, nor are they ever satiate of ills. For passions and irrational desires are ills exceeding great, and over these God hath set up the mind to and over these God hath set up the mind and over these God hath set up the mind to play the part of judge and executioner. In that case, Father mind, the teaching as to fate, which previously thou didst explain to me, risks to be overset. For that if it be absolutely fated for a man to fornicate or commit sacrilege, or do other some form of evil, why is he punished, when he hath done the deed from fate's necessity? Hermes. All works, my son, are fates, and without fate not of things corporal, i.e. either good or bad, can come to pass. But it is fated too, that he who doeth ill shall suffer. And for this cause he doth it, that he may suffer what he suffereth, because he did it. But for the moment, Tat, let be the teaching as to vice and fate, for we have spoken of these things in other sermons. But now our teaching is about the mind, what mind can do and how it is so different. and men being such, and in irrational lives so changed, and then again that in irrational lives it is not of a beneficial nature, while that in men it quencheth out of the wrathful and the lustful elements. Of men, again, we must class some as led by reason, and others by unreason. But all men are subject to fate and genesis and change, for these are the beginning and end of fate. And though all men do suffer fated things, those led by reason, like suffering with the rest, but since they've freed themselves from viciousness, not being bad, they do not suffer bad. Tat. How meanest thou again, my father? Is it not the fornicator bad, the murderer bad, and so with all the rest? Hermes. I don't mean that, but that the mind-led man, my son, though not the fornicator, will suffer just as though he had committed fornication, and though he be no murderer, as though he had committed murder. The quality of change he can no more escape than that of genesis. But it is impossible for one who hath the mind to free himself from vice. Wherefore I've ever heard my son, good Damon, also say, and had he set it down in written words, he would have greatly helped the race of men. For he alone, my son, doth truly as the firstborn God, gazing on all things, give voice to words, logo divine. Yes, once I heard him say, all things are one, and most of all the bodies which the mind alone perceive. Our life is owing to God's energy and power and eon. His mind is good, so is his soul as well. And this being so, intelligible things know not of separation. So then mind, being ruler of all things, and being soul of God, can do whatever it wills. So dost thou understand and carry back this word unto the question that you asked before. I mean about mind's fate. For if you do with accuracy, son, eliminate all captious arguments, thou wilt discover that of very truth the mind, the soul of God, doth rule over all, over fate, and law and all things else, and nothing is impossible to it, neither over fate to set a human soul, nor under the fate to set a soul neglectful of what comes to pass. Let this so far suffice from the good Damon's most good words. Tat. Yes, words divinely spoken, father mine, truly and helpfully. But further still explain to me this. Thou saidst that mind and lives irrational worked in them as their nature, co-working with their impulses. But impulses of lives irrational, as I do think, are passions. Now if the mind co-worketh with these impulses, and if the impulses of lives irrational be passions, then is mind also passion, taking its color from the passions. Hermes. Well put, my son, thou questionest right nobly, and it is just that I as well should answer. Answer nobly. All things incorporeal when in a body are subject unto passion, and in the proper sense they are themselves all passions. For everything that moves itself is incorporeal, while everything that's moved is body. Incorporeals are further moved by mind, and movements, i.e. movement is passion. Both then are subject unto passions, both mover and the moved, the former being ruler and the latter ruled. But when a man has freed himself from body, then is he also freed from passion. But more precisely, son, naught is impassible, but all are passible. Yet passion differeth from passibility, for that the one is active while the other is passive. Incorporeals, moreover, act upon themselves, for either they are motionless or they are moved. But whichsoever it be, it's passion, but bodies are invariably acted on, and therefore they are passible. Do not then let terms trouble thee. Action and passion are both the self-same thing. To use the fair-sounding term, however, does no harm. Tat. Most clearly hast you, father of mine, set forth the teaching. Hermes. Consider this well, my son, that these two things God hath bestowed on man beyond all mortal lives, both mind and speech equal to immortality. He hath the mind for knowing God, and uttered speech for eulogy him. And if one useth these for what he ought, he'll differ not a whit from the immortals. Nay, rather on departing from the body, he will be guided by the twain under the choir of gods and blessed ones. Tat. Why, Father of mine, do not the other lives make use of speech? Nay, son, but only use of voice. Speech is far different from voice, for speech is general among all men, while voice doth differ in each class of living thing. But with men also, Father mine, according to each race, speech differs. Yes, son, but man is one. So also speech is one and is interpreted, and it is found the same in Egypt and in Persia and in Greece. Thou seemest, son, to be in ignorance of reason's worth and greatness, for that the blessed God, good Damon, hath declared, soul is in body, mind in soul, but reason is in mind in God, and mind in God, and God is Father of all of these. The reason then is the mind's image, and mind God's image, while body is the image of the form, and form is the image of the soul. The subtlest part of matter is then air, soul of soul, mind, and mind of God. And God surroundeth all and permeath all, while mind surroundeth soul, soul air, matter. Necessity and providence and nature are instruments of cosmos and of matter's ordering, while of intelligible things each is essence, and sameness is their essence. But of the bodies of the cosmos each is many. For through possession's sameness these compose the bodies, though they do not change from one into another of themselves, do nathness keep the corruption of their sameness. Whereas in all the rest of composed bodies, of each there is a certain number. For without number, structure cannot be, or composition, or decomposition. Now it is units that give birth to numbers and increase it, and being decomposed are taken back again into themselves. Matter is one, and this whole cosmos, the mighty God and image of the mightier one, both with him unified. And the conserver of the will and order of the Father is filled full of life. Naught is there in it throughout the whole of aeon. The Father's everlasting reestablishment, nor of the whole, nor of the parts which doth not live. For not a single thing that's dead hath been, or is, or shall be in this cosmos. For that the Father willed it should have life lived as long as it should be. Wherefore it needs must be a God. How then, O Son, could there be in the God the image of the Father in the plenitude of life, dead things? For that death is corruption, and corruption destruction. How then could any part of that which knoweth no corruption be corrupted, or any whit of him the God destroyed? Tat. Do they not then, my Father, die, the lives in it that are its parts? Hermes. Hush, son, led into error by the term in use for what takes place. They do not die, my son, but are dissolved as compound bodies. Now dissolution is not death, but dissolution of a compound. It is dissolved not so that it may be destroyed, but that it may be renewed. For what is the activity of life? Is it not motion? What then in cosmos is there that hath no motion? Naught is there, son. Tat. Doth not earth even, Father, seem to thee to have no motion? Hermes. Nay, son, but rather that she is the only thing which, though in very rapid motion, is also stable. For how would it not be a thing to laugh at, that the nurse of all things should have no motion, when she engenders and brings forth all things? For 'tis impossible that without motion one who doth engender should do so. That thou should ask if the fourth part or element is not inert is most ridiculous. For the body which doth have no motion gives sign of nothing but inertia. Know therefore generally, my son, that all that is in cosmos is being moved for increase or for decrease. Now that which is kept moving also lives, but there is no necessity that which lives should be all same. For being simultaneous, the cosmos as a whole is not subject to change, my son, but all its parts are subject unto it. Yet not of it is subject to corruption or destroyed. It is the terms employed that confuse men, for 'tis not genesis that constitutes life, but 'tis sensation. It is not change that constitutes death, but 'tis forgetfulness. Since then these things are so, they are immortal all, matter and life and spirit, mind and soul, of which whatever liveth is composed. Whatever then doth live oweth its immortality unto mind, and most of all doth man, he who is both recipient of God and coessential with him. For with this life alone doth God consort, by visions in the night, by tokens in the day, and by all things doth he foretell the future unto him, by birds, by inward parts, by wind, by tree. Wherefore doth man lay claim to know things past, things present, and to come. Observe this too, my son, that each one of the other lives inhibith one portion of the cosmos. Aquatic creatures water, terrene earth, and airy creatures air. While man doth use all these, earth, water, air, and fire, he seeth heaven too, and doth contact it with his sense. But God surroundeth all and permeate all, for he is energy and power, and it is not difficult, my son, to conceive God. But if thou wouldst him also contemplate, behold the ordering of the cosmos, and see the orderly behavior of its ordering. Behold thou the necessity of things made manifest, and see the providence of things become and things becoming. Behold how matter is all full of life. Behold this so great God in movement, with all the good and noble ones, gods, demons, and men. Tat. But these are purely energies, O father of mine. Hermes. If then they're purely energies, my son, by whom then are they energized except by God? Or art thou ignorant, and just as heaven, earth, water, air are parts of cosmos, in just the selfsame way God's parts are life, and immortality, and energy, and spirit, and necessity, and providence, and nature, soul, and mind, and the duration, that is, eon or eternity, of all these that is called good. And there are not of things that have become or are becoming in which God is not. Tat. Is he in matter, father? Hermes. Matter, my son, is separate from God, in order that thou mayest attribute to it the quality of space. But what thing else than mass thinkst thou it is, if it's not energized? Whereas if it be energized, by whom is it made so? For energies, we said, are parts of God. By whom are then all lives enlivened? By whom are things immortal made immortal? By whom changed things made changeable? And whether thou dost speak of matter or body or of essence, know that these too are energies of God, and that materiality is matter's energy, that corporal reality is body's energy, and that essentially does constitute the energy of essence, and this is God, the All. And in the all is not that is not God. Wherefore, nor size, nor space, nor quality, nor form, nor time surroundeth God. For he is all, and all surroundeth all, and permeate all. Unto this reason, son, thy adoration and thy worship pay. There is one way alone to worship God. It is not to be bad. Chapter 13. The Secret Sermon on the Mountain. This dialogue is in many ways the culmination of the whole corpus, summing up the theory of the Hermetic system at the same time as it provides an intriguing glimpse at the practice. The focus of the dialogue is the experience of rebirth, which involves the replacement of 12 tormentors within the self by 10 divine powers, leading to the awakening of knowledge of the self and God. The secret hymnody is presented as a litany for worship, to be performed twice each day at sunrise and sunset. It's interesting to note that while the sunrise worship is performed facing east, the sunset worship is due to the south. Egyptian tradition from pharaonic times onward saw the west as the direction of death. The usual difficulties within the multiple meanings of the Greek word logos appear in the translation, compounded by Mede's awkward style. Additionally, one of Mede's few evasions can be found in section 12, where he relates the 12 tormentors to the 12 types of life. This should more simply and more accurately have been translated as the 12 signs of the zodiac. The theosophical distaste for astrology may well have been involved here. And so we begin. Now, in the general sermons, Father, thou didst speak in riddles most unclear, conversing on divinity. And when thou saidst to man could ever be saved before rebirth, thy meaning thou'st did hide. Further, when I became my suppliant in wending up the mount, after thou hadst conversed with me, and when I longed to learn the sermon on rebirth, and for this beyond all things is just the one thing I know not, thou saidst that thou would give it to me, when thou shalt have become a stranger to the world. Wherefore I got me ready, and made the thought in me a stranger to the world illusion. And now do thou fill up the things that fall short in me with what thou saidst would give me the tradition of rebirth, setting it forth in speech or in the secret way. I know not, O thrice greatest one, from out what matter and what womb man comes to birth, or of what seed. Hermes replies, wisdom that understands in silence. Such is the matter and the womb from out which man is born, and the true good the seed. Who is the sower, Father? For I am altogether at loss. It is the will of God, my son. And of what kind is he that is begotten, Father? For I have no share of that essence in me, which doth transcend the senses. The one that is begot will be another one from God, God's Son? All and all, out of all powers composed. Thou tellest me a riddle, Father, and dost not speak as father unto son. This race, my son, is never taught, but when he willeth it, its memory is restored by God. Thou sayest things impossible, O Father, things that are forced. Hence answers what I have direct unto these things. Am I a son strange to my father's race? Keep it not, Father, back from me. I am a true-born son. Explain to me the manner of rebirth. What may I say, my son? I can but tell thee this. Whenever I see myself within this simple vision brought to birth out of God's misery, whenever I see within myself the simple vision brought to birth out of God's mercy, I have passed through myself into a body that can never die. And now I am not as I was before, but I am born in mind. The way to do this is not taught, and it cannot be seen by the compounded element by means of which thou seest. Yes, I have had my former composed form dismembered for me. I am no longer touched, but I have touch. I have dimensions too, and yet am I a stranger to them now. Thou seest me with eyes, my son, but what I am thou dost not understand, even with fullest strain of body and of sight. Into fierce frenzy and mind fury hast thou plunged me, Father, for now no longer do I see myself. I would, my son, that thou hadst ever passed right through thyself, as they who dream and sleep yet sleepless. Tell me this too. I would, my son, that thou hadst ever passed right through thyself, as they who dream and sleep yet sleepless. Tell me this too. Who is the author of rebirth? The Son of God, the one man, by God's will. Now hast thou brought me, Father, unto pure stupefaction, arrested from the senses which I had before. For now I see thy greatness identical with thy distinctive form. Even in this thou art untrue. The mortal form doth change with every day. 'Tis churned by time to growth and waning, as being an untrue thing. What then is true, thrice greatest one? That which is never troubled, son, which cannot be defined, that which no color hath, nor any figure, which is not churned, which hath no garment, which giveth light, that which is comprehensible unto itself alone, which doth not suffer change, that which no body can contain. In very truth I lose my reason, Father. Just when I thought to be made wise by thee, I find the senses of this mind of mine blocked up. Thus it is, son. That which is upward borne like fire, yet is borne down like earth. That which is moist like water, yet blows like air. How shalt thou this perceive with sense? That which is not solid, nor yet moist, which not can bind or loose, of that in power and energy alone can man have any notion. And even then it wants a man who can perceive the way of birth in God. Am I incapable of this, O Father? Nay, God forbid. Nay, God forbid, my son. Withdraw into thyself, and it will come. Will, and it comes to pass. Throw out of work the body's senses, and thy divinity shall come to birth. Purge from thyself the brutish torments, things of matter. I have tormentors then in me, O Father. I know few, my son, nay, fearful ones and manifold. I do not know them, Father. Torment, the first thing is this, not knowing, son. The second one is grief. The third, intemperance. The fourth, concupiscence. The fifth, unrighteousness. The sixth is avarice. The seventh, error. The eighth is envy. The ninth, guile. The 10th is anger. 11th, rashness. The 12th is malice. These are in number 12, but under them are many more, my son. And creeping through the prison of the body, they force the man that's placed therein to suffer in his senses. But they depart, though not all at once. But they depart, though not all at once, from him who hath been taken pity on by God. And this is it, which constitutes the manner of rebirth, and the reason. And now, my son, be still and solemn silence keep. Thus shall the mercy that flows on us from God not cease. Henceforth rejoice, O son, for by the powers of God thou art being purified for the articulation of the reason. Gnosis of God hath come to us, and when this comes, my son, not knowing is cast out. Gnosis of joy hath come to us, and on its way, son, sorrow will flee away to them who give it room. The power that follows joy do I invoke, thy self-control. O power most sweet, let us most gladly bid it welcome. How with its coming doth it chase intemperance away. Now forth on continence I call, the power against desire. This step, my son, is righteousness' firm seat, for without judgment, see how she hath chased unrighteousness away. We are made righteous, son, by the departure of unrighteousness. Power sixth I call to us, that against avarice, sharing with all. And now that avarice is gone, I call on truth, and error flees, and truth is with us. See how the measure of the good is full, my son, upon truth's coming, for envy is gone from us, and unto truth is joined the good as well with life and light. And now no more doth any torment of the darkness venture nigh, but vanquished all have fled with whirring wings. Thou knowest now, my son, the manner of rebirth. And when the 10 is come, my son, that driveth out the 12th, the birth in understanding. And by this birth we are made into gods. When then doth by his mercy gain this birth in God, abandoning the body's senses, knows himself to be of light and life, and that he doth consist of these, and thus is filled with bliss. By God made steadfast, Father, no longer with the sight my eyes afford I look on things, but with the energy the mind doth give me through the powers. In heaven am I, in earth, in water, air. I am in animals, in plants. I'm in the womb, before the womb, after the womb. I am everywhere. But further, tell me this, how are the torments of the darkness, when they are 12 in number, driven out by the 10 powers? What is the way of it, thrice greatest one? This dwelling place through which we have just passed, the human body, is constituted from the cycle of the 12 types of life, this being composed of elements 12 in number, but of one nature, an omniform idea. For man's delusion there are disunions in them, son, while in their action they are one. Not only can we never part rashness from wrath, they cannot ever be distinguished. According to right reason, then, they, the 12, naturally withdraw once and for all, inasmuch as they are chased out by no less than 10 powers, that is, the 10. For son, the 10 is that which giveth birth to souls, and life and light are unified there, where the one hath being the Spirit. According then to reason, the one contains the 10 the one. Father, I see the all. I see myself in mind. This is, my son, rebirth. No more to look on things from body's point of view. Though this sermon on rebirth, on which I did not comment, in order that we may not be calumniators of the all unto the multitude, to whom indeed God himself doth will, should not. Tell me, Father, this body, which is made up of the powers, is it at any time dissolved? Hush, son. Speak not of things impossible, else wilt thou sin, and thy mind's eye be quenched. The natural body which our sense perceives is far removed from this essential birth. The first must be dissolved. The last can never be. The first must die. The last, death cannot touch. Dost thou not know thou hast been born a God, son of the one, even as myself? I would, O Father, hear the praise-giving with him, which thou didst say thou heardest, when thou wert at the 8 of powers. Just as the shepherd did foretell, I should, my son, when I come to the 8, well dost thou haste to strike thy tent, for thou hast been made pure. The shepherd, mind of all masterhood, hath not passed on to me more than hath been written down, for full well did he know that I should myself be able to learn all, and hear what I should wish, and see all things. He left me the making of fair things, wherefore the powers within me, even as they are in all, break into song. Father, I wish to hear. I long to know these things. Be still, my son. Hear the praise giving now that keeps the soul in tune, hymn of rebirth, a hymn I would not have thought fit so readily to tell, hadst thou not reached the end of all. Wherefore this is not taught, but is kept hid in silence. Thus then, my son, stand in a place uncovered to the sky, facing the southern wind about the sinking of the setting sun, and make thy worship. So in like manner too, when he doth rise with face to the east wind. Now, son, be still. The secret hymnody. Let every nature of the world receive the utterance of my hymn. Open thou earth. Let every bolt of the abyss be drawn for me. Stir not, ye trees. I am about to hymn creation's Lord, both all and one. Ye heavens open and ye winds stay still, and let God's deathless sphere receive my word. For I will sing the praise of him who founded all, who fixed the earth and hung up heaven, and gave command that ocean should forge sweet water to earth, to both those parts that are uninhabited and those that are not, for the support and use of every man, who made the fire to shine for gods and men for every act. Let us together all give praise to him, sublime above the heavens of every nature, Lord. 'Tis he who is the eye of mind. May he accept the praise of these my powers. Ye powers that are within me, him the one and all, sing with my will powers all that are within me. O blessed Gnosis, by thee illumined, hymning through thee the light that mind alone can see, I joy in the joy of mind. Sing with me praises all ye powers. Sing praise my self-control, sing thou through me my righteousness, the praises of the righteous. Sing thou my sharing all, the praises of the all. Through me sing truth's praises. Sing thou good, the good, of life and light from us to your own praises flow. Father, I give ye thanks. To thee, thou energy of all my powers, I give thee thanks, O God, thou power of all my energies. Thy reason sings through me thy praises. Take back through me the all into thy reason, my reasonable oblation. Thus cry the powers in me, they sing thy praise, thou all. They do thy will, from thee thy will, to thee the all. Receive from all their reasonable oblation, the all that is in us of life. Preserve, O light, illuminate, O God, inspirit it. It is thy mind that plays the shepherd to thy word, O thou Creator, bestower of the Spirit. Thou art God, thy man thus cries to thee through fire, through air, through earth, through water, through spirit, through thy creatures. 'Tis from the eon I have found praise giving, and in thy will, the object of my search, have I found rest. By thy good pleasure have I seen this praise giving being sung, O Father. I have set it in my cosmos too. Say in the cosmos that thy mind alone can see, my son. Yes, Father, in the cosmos that the mind alone can see, for I have been made able by thy hymn, and by thy praise giving my mind hath been illumined. But further, I myself as well would from my natural mind send praise giving to God. but not unheedfully, my son. Aye, what I behold in mind, that do I say. To thee, thou parent of my bringing into birth, as unto God, I, Tat, send reasonable offerings. O God and Father, thou art the Lord, thou art the mind. Receive from me oblations reasonable as thou wouldst wish. For by thy will all things have been perfected. Send thou oblation, son, acceptable to God, the Sire of all. But add, my son, to through the word. Ah, yes, I give thee, Father, thanks for showing me to sing such hymns. Happy am I, my son, that thou hast brought the good fruits forth of truth, products that cannot die. And now that thou hast learnt this lesson from me, make promise to keep silence on thy virtue, and to no soul, my son, make known the handing on to thee the manner of rebirth, that we may not be thought to be culminators. And now we both of us have given heed sufficiently, both I, the speaker, and the hearer, you. In mind hast thou become a knower of thyself and our common sire.